Hey there. Welcome to Toy Talk with Mike and Chad, episode 71. I'm Mike.
I'm Chad.
And the toys that we're going to be talking about today are some new G.I. Joe Classifieds.
Yeah.
Now, it's always weird when we do these. Like, we did a G.I. Joe Classified video like a month and a half ago, maybe. And when I was looking at the G.I. Joes that we had to talk about today, some of them feel like, did we not talk about this already? They're pretty, I feel like we've had them forever. Like, we've got the Stinger Driver and Jeep to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I've had that for like months.
I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, like we have a couple of vehicles and a handful of figures.
I don't think we did.
No, we didn't talk about this stuff. But that's what I mean. Like, it's just, you get so much stuff so quickly.
Yeah.
Like, even by showing you all this stuff today, this is going to be all the G.I. Joe Classified. You'll be up to date with all of our G.I. Joe purchases. But we have another one scheduled to arrive on Tuesday. And there's a bunch of other figures that have been showing up online, like Road Pig and some of the retro Cobra Trooper, Alpine. So I imagine probably within another 2 weeks, we're going to have another 6-7 figures to talk about.
Great.
So we might as well get these ones over with. Although as we shoot this, it's the Sunday of, I don't know what the date is, October
20th.
Something like that. And so New York Comic Con just happened. They did some G.I. Joe reveals. Did you get a chance to look at them all?
I did.
Any thoughts?
I'm kind of annoyed about the Dr. Mindbender, which you said I probably would be, because it looks...
We've talked about that
almost identical, yeah.
Yeah, you overpaid for the last Dr. Mindbender, and now they basically released the same figure on a vintage card.
Yeah. As far as the other ones go, I don't think my only gripe would have been for the Viper, and it was what we were talking about, how they didn't sculpt the goggles onto the helmet this time around. It's like, those goggles are so flimsy. And
yeah, the Cobra Viper, the vintage one, had goggles sculpted to its helmet. They didn't come off. I like when they take things that used to be part of the sculpt and now they're removable. Like a lot of vintage figures had guns and knives that were just part of the sculpt, but now they come out of their sheaths and their holsters, which is cool. But I don't understand why the Viper's goggles are a removable piece. It doesn't enhance the figure because he doesn't even have eyes to wear the goggles over. And we have, how many Vipers now? Like 5 or 6?
5.
We've got the original one. We've got the Cobra Island one. We got the 3-pack. We got the Python Patrol. Like, we've got a lot. Yeah. And they all have those goggles that fall off if you look at them funny. And I really kind of wish going forward, if they're going to keep giving us that same mold, at least fix the goggle problem. Glue those goggles in place. But otherwise, I don't think there was a whole lot of new news. There was maybe some new images. Mm-hmm. A lot of the stuff we already knew about, like Footloose.
Yeah.
But the Cobra Bunker was new.
Yeah, that looks kind of cool. I was excited for that one. And I think in our chat, I made the comment, like, man, now they're making like friggin' bunkers for them to go in.
Yeah.
I did think more about that Snake Eyes after we were exchanging it, because, I mean, Snake Eyes is a Snake Eyes is a Snake Eyes. He does look cool, but I need that motherfucking polar bear. Like that.
Yeah, so there's a Snake Eyes 2-pack, comes with a polar bear. Now, that's specifically from an episode of the cartoon. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's like, so in the early cartoons, Snake Eyes was colored blue and purple because a solid black character just wouldn't really work in the animation. So, yeah, this is a Snake Eyes. It's blue, purple, the commando style look, and he comes with like pink hands because in that episode he had to carry like an irradiated canister and it was going to kill him, so he kind of sacrificed himself to take this canister away from his teammates, and then he got nursed back to health by some woodsman, but he had to fight off a polar bear while he was lost in the wilderness. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's kind of cool, but not really necessary. I'm okay with them doing that sort of stuff with the reaction figure line, because they're kind of cheap, and not cheap enough, mind you, but so when you want to add in these characters that were just like in one episode, that's kind of a fun way to get them. But I don't know how much that classified 2-pack is going to cost, but I'm going to guess like $100 plus.
Probably a deluxe.
Yeah. Because that polar bear is much bigger than the dogs and stuff.
I know. I looked at that after you had sent me the thumbnail of it, and I was like, that is either going to be super expensive in general, or it won't be as big. And then I looked at the specifications, and I'm like, oh man, that's going to be an expensive one.
Yeah, like I'd say it's clearly over $100, like maybe 120, maybe 150, and it's for a Snake Eyes that we're not really clamoring for because we already have a bunch of Snake Eyeses, and even that blue and purple Snake Eyes I do have in the reaction figure line, in the 4-inch line, and so far Classified hasn't really been giving us cartoon accurate. Mm-hmm. I'm almost a little worried if they start going down that route, because that opens up a whole other avenue for them that I really don't want to go down, because they're already giving us kind of new interpretations. Now they're giving us the retro card ones, which are kind of more inspired by the retro figures. If they start giving us cartoon-based figures, we're going to have to buy all the same characters over again. So yeah, I don't love that they're going down the cartoon direction, but it is a nice looking pack. So hopefully it's a one-off with the cartoon stuff.
Yeah, I think, like you said, those are better meant for like reaction figures.
Yeah,
because again, it's going to open up that other can of worms, and we're going to start collecting them, and then it's just going to spin out of control.
Yeah. And as for the bunker, like, I think it's a neat idea. Like, they used to have these little bases in the vintage line. So me and my brother, it was technically my brother owned it, but it was the Cobra bunker, and it was just like this little breakaway thing, so you could shoot a missile at it and it would fall apart. And another really cool one he had was Checkpoint Alpha, which was like a little tower. It almost looks like a traffic stop. Yeah. It's got a little swinging gate with a stop sign on it. It comes with a little like pylon or whatever. Yep. Anyway, it was just like a fun little set. But I don't really need that stuff for my Classified figures. I don't have room to do a diorama. We're not playing with them. So I don't need, like, I feel the same way as do with the bases as I do with the vehicles. If they want to make them, and somebody out there wants to buy them, great. I'm glad they exist. But don't package them with action figures that I want, because I don't want to have to buy every vehicle and every place that they decide to make. So, yeah. So I guess that's it for New York Comic Con.
Yeah. Some cool stuff coming down the pipe, but
cool stuff for sure.
We'll check out the price point.
Yeah, I'm not sure when we're going to... I'm kind of waiting for them to show us more of Nemesis Enforcer. So I'm not sure when that's coming. I kind of was hoping maybe we'd get him before the end of the year, but it doesn't look like it at this point. All right, so should we dive into what we do have? All right, so you don't have most of your figures here, because we're at my house. But you have all this stuff.
Yes.
So why don't we start with the Stinger. So this thing here we've had for a while. So this is the Cobra Jeep. And this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. This is really cool. But if it didn't come with a figure, I would not have bought it. It's big. I don't really have room for it. I already have the G.I. Joe Jeep. Again, if I was a kid and I was playing with these things, of course I would want a bad guy Jeep to go with my good guy Jeep to roll around on the floor. But as an adult who just puts these things on display on his shelves, I don't have room for all these things. That aside, I do think it's awesome.
And I certainly don't have...
Yeah, it's finicky. I find when you hold it, either the missiles fall off or this little front thing falls off. So yeah, be careful when you're...
I certainly don't have space for it either in my tiny apartment. So
yeah.
Right away, I like this a lot better than the Vamp, though. I think for me, the doors do it, because the doors are super badass.
Yeah, it's got those like kind of suicide doors.
Yeah.
It's got a roof. Yeah, the G.I. Joe Jeep was kind of open canopy.
It was like a T-bar, sort of.
Yeah, this one here, just like the vintage toy, has got a roof. It's got doors, so it's more enclosed. Yeah. Instead of the double-barreled gun at the back, it's got this missile launcher with 4 missiles. It does have a couple other sculpting differences, too. Some of the snap-on pieces are a little bit different, like this. The engine or whatever that comes out of the hood is different than the one the Vamp has. But for the most part, it's the same mold as the Vamp, obviously.
Yeah, no, I think I prefer this over the Vamp, but
Well, black is cooler than green.
Black is cooler than green, but I think the icons on it, like this little spider-looking dude or whatever it is here on the side.
Yeah.
Rambar, like, yeah, it just looks so much better. I don't know.
Yeah.
Color preference.
It's cool. Plus, it's got the other one had a windshield.
Yeah.
But it was clear. This one's got like a tinted windshield. Although I do find, I don't know if you've actually sat your driver in it.
Not yet.
With the roof and the doors, it's not easy to get the guy in and out of here. It's a kind of a tight space. Now, I'll do an insert shot where I'll show you what it looks like with the driver in the door and kind of how difficult it can be to get him in there. Like the last Jeep, I love that it's got real mirrors, like on the...
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, so like the little rear view mirrors or side mirrors there, you can see your reflection in there, which is pretty cool. So yeah, very, very cool. And
I'm a fan.
I am a fan too. They're probably going to repaint this at least one more time to give us the Tiger Force version. And who knows, they could even go beyond that. I might be tempted to get the Tiger Force one, even if it didn't come with a figure. But especially if it comes with a figure, then I'm going to have to. But past that, if they keep releasing like repaints of this, even with a driver or something, I might just have to pass and try and buy the driver on eBay later. I just don't have the room.
So if they put out, another one, Tiger Force.
Yep.
Do you think they would put one out for Python Patrol?
Well, they seem to be pretty much sticking to the vintage line.
Okay.
Like, there's no reason why they couldn't do like a Night Force doc, but they don't. The only Night Force characters they've done are the handful of characters that were in the Night Force in the old one. Okay. Same as with Slaughter's Marauders. Like, they could take any random character and say, here's a Roadblock repainted in blue and green for Slaughter's Marauders. But they don't. They stick with the vintage ones. So when it comes to this stuff, there was the vintage green Jeep, the Vamp, there was the black Stinger, and then there was the Tiger Force. And I think that's really the only use that this mold got in the vintage line. So it seems like obviously they're going to do the Tiger Force one. But beyond that, like, yeah, they could give us a yellow one and a pink one and a purple one. But I just don't know if G.I. Joe collectors are kind of fickle. And I think they'll be like, hey, we didn't have that when we were a kid, so we don't need it. And I think Hasbro kind of knows that about us. So I think that's probably where they'll stop. But who knows? All right. And I will mention, I don't think the Vamp came with nearly as much stuff. But this one came with a bunch of explosions.
I can't remember it coming with that much stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of these are the same explosions that we saw that came with Scrap Iron.
Yeah. Because
he came with a little missile launcher. And so this thing here, I haven't even opened these up yet because they're probably going to just go directly into my spare parts bin. I'm not really going to use these.
Never to be seen again.
Like, they're cool, like, explosion effects with some smoke effects. So if you had a diorama and you wanted to set these around your, so it looks like missile hits or something. And they also have these, like, smoke trails that come off behind the missiles.
Who were, like, from the Steel Corps.
The Steel Corps, and again, Scrap Iron had these sort of things. So it looks like the missiles on the back of the Jeep are firing. So, like, that's cool. There's a bunch of them, but I don't really need them. And then we should talk about the driver. So this is the Stinger driver. So just like in the vintage toy line, it is a gray version of the Cobra Trooper or Cobra Officer, I guess, that comes with the Jeep. Did you have this guy when you were a kid, or?
No, I don't think I did. My thoughts on Cobra enemies anyway. Love them. Love the look. I'm a fan of these smaller, or I should say bigger holsters on the back where they've got the shotgun, I'm assuming. That's a shotgun.
Yeah. It's better. A lot of the backpacks are kind of useless, and they just weigh the characters down. So I think, having a something like that, like a big holster. Do you still call it a holster for a shotgun?
It a holster. Yeah.
Like, it makes sense, and it doesn't weigh the character down so much.
Yeah, he's
cool.
Standard. Yeah. I like the paint scheme on this one. The two-tone grays.
Mm-hmm. And it's cool because we already got the gray version of the female Cobra Trooper.
Yeah.
She came as the driver with the ferret.
The ferret.
So yeah, it's cool that we have the male, female. They look good displayed together. I'll probably do a little side by side so you can see them together. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, and I always feel a little weird making a big deal about it, but it's something worth noticing.
The diaper?
No, the skin tone. Like the original Stinger driver was Caucasian, and he is just supposed to be a generic trooper, so he's not a unique character like somebody like Cobra Commander or something. But this guy here, they decided to make him African American, and I don't know if they just think, hey, well, let's add diversity wherever we can. But it is just the kind of thing that's like, I think they should maybe release another version with the Caucasian head. Or I don't know why they didn't give us that option.
Another head.
With a lot of the other characters, like the Televiper, they've given us 2 heads so you can kind of choose. It just seems like, they're changing a vintage character. And I think that will kind of bother some people. And it doesn't have to be like necessarily a race thing. It's just like if this was your favorite character or your favorite toy when you were a kid, and now they've changed them. I'm just kind of curious as to why they made that move. But I think there's a good indication that we will probably get this character maybe on a retro card sometime down the road, and maybe then they'll release him as a white guy. I don't know. But yeah, he's pretty cool. I like him.
Yeah, solid figure.
Yep. All right, so we've got another vehicle. Why don't we jump right into that?
Sure.
So speaking of Tiger Force repaints, this here is the Ferret, which is the 4-wheeler, the ATV, that in the vintage line, it was a Cobra vehicle, but then it got repainted into the Tiger Paw, which is the Tiger Force version that the G.I. Joes use. So, yeah, I loved this toy when we got it the first time. I thought it was probably the funnest of all the small vehicles that have been released. I love that it's got the little shocks on the. So I think I like this one even more just because the paint scheme is more interesting. The Cobra one was solid blue. This one's got like the yellow tiger stripes with the face painted on it. Oh, like all the Tiger Force vehicles have the like eyes and teeth and everything. So yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. What do you think?
I am a fan. I, like you, also enjoy the paint scheme on it, but I really like the
driver?
The driver, like the color scheme on the driver. It just pops. Because that's not... Like, I'm colorblind, so that's a brown, I'm assuming? Like a light brown?
Yeah, he's black with brown tiger stripes.
And is that gray, too?
No, he doesn't really have any gray on him. So he's mostly just black with brown web gear, brown mask. He's got some orange.
Yeah, okay.
He's got an orange like turtleneck and like orange explosives there. So yeah, the driver is Wreckage or Sabretooth. I think they call him Sabretooth in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's been released with different names in the past. It's supposed to be the same character though. I think it was just copyright issues at the time when they changed his name. But this is a cool character. Now, he was not part of the vintage G.I. Joe line. This is a newer character. He was added in the 2000s of G.I. Joe. But since then, he got added to the 4-inch line, and he's been a reaction figure. So he's kind of become, ingrained. This is now like my 3rd or 4th version of this character. And he is a direct repaint of the Cobra Saboteur. Firefly. So this one, just like all the previous versions, they were all repaints of Fireflies. This one's a repaint of Firefly. Makes sense. They did change a couple of things. For one, his paint job is a little different than previous versions. The other Tiger Force versions of him, he wore green with yellow stripes. So the fact that they went black with brown stripes, again, I'm not sure why they did it. Maybe they felt they wouldn't piss off vintage collectors because vintage collectors didn't have this guy. He's a newer character. They've added to his mask. They put this kind of skull print on his mask, which is new. He's never had that before. I have mixed feelings about it because I don't think it looks bad here, but I don't necessarily love it. Those Marauder Task Force figures I have? So there's a company called what are they called? Marauders, Gunrunners, I think, but they make a line of figures called Marauder Task Force, and basically they're generic. They're GI Joes essentially, but they're just, you kind of build your own guy. You can choose your own, buy different head options. But this is the first time I had seen that. Marauder Task Force had a bunch of different balaclava heads, and they had different skull patterns on them. And some people loved them, and they'd freak out and say, like, "Oh man, I love those new skull masks." I didn't really like the look of them. So the fact that he never had this before, they gave it to him now. I don't mind it, but I kind of wish they gave you an option like with two heads, so you could, if you don't like it, you didn't have to have it. And then the other thing they've added to him is they've given him this helmet, which you're going to drive around on an ATV. Good safety to have a helmet on, and it's the same kind of helmet we've seen come with a bunch of other characters. And so I like the consistency. I like the way it looks with the yellow paint job and the Tiger Force teeth. So yeah, I really like this guy too. Sorry, I've kind of hogged the floor.
No, it's colors that I would think wouldn't normally work together, but they do. Like browns and oranges and yellows. It seems like it's a pretty like fall kind of character.
Well, it's a good time of year to get him.
Fall. But yeah, no, I like the helmet, and again, safety first. So
yep,
you're out on that ATV, driving around, I guess.
Now, do you display yours with the helmet or without?
It's gonna be a helmet.
See, I think I'm going to display it without. I haven't really displayed him yet, even though I've had this now for a month or two. Because until I review it for you guys, it just kind of sits on my desk. But I will eventually go into my collection, and I'll probably display him without the helmet on, and I'll just set the helmet like separately or something. Okay, so we had a brief intermission because my wife just came home, and now my animals are all riled up and running around in excitement. So hopefully you don't pick up their little pitter patter. But yeah, if you hear a bunch of stuff, yeah, my animal's going crazy. Anyway, so we still have a few more figures to talk about. Let's talk about a couple of retro cards.
Absolutely.
All right, so maybe we'll start with this one. So this is Retro Card Stalker. And so by Retro Card, he came on like an actual blister card. Most of these classified figures come in a box, but the Retro Card ones come on a package with the old explosion, just like the old 80s figures. And they tend to be re-releases of figures we've already gotten, but in more accurate colors to their vintage toy. So like we got a Stalker like 2 years ago.
Yep.
But he was wearing really dark green, and he had this kind of scarf around his neck and everything. Like it was a fine figure, but it wasn't as accurate to his vintage figure, who didn't have a scarf and had much brighter greens. And that's what we get here. Brighter Stalker, no scarf. I think they might have changed up some of his other gear. I'll do a side-by-side so you guys can judge the differences. But for the most part, I think it's mostly the same figure. Thoughts on Stalker?
I'm a fan. He seems really light. Or maybe I just imagine that. I don't know.
Feels normal to me.
So how accurate is this, would you say?
Pretty accurate.
Pretty accurate?
Like the shape of the camouflage is still a little off.
Yeah.
Because, and to be honest, this is probably more realistic because it's more defined shapes kind of going across his chest, whereas the vintage one almost looked kind of blob, and then almost the sides, the edges of the shapes felt a little like they just kind of fuzzed out a little bit. So yeah, if I put it side by side with the vintage figure, it doesn't match up perfectly, but again, I don't think you need these things to match up exactly. If it's going to be the exact same as the figure you had as a kid, why even bother buying it again?
Exactly.
So I don't need it to be the same. It is more true than the previous release.
Well, that's what I guess you want with a retro card figure. I mean, this is only my second Lonzo.
Lonzo Wilkinson.
Lonzo Wilkinson.
Yeah.
So I don't really have much to compare him to, aside from the older version. He is a character I did not have as a kid.
He would have been one of my very first G.I. Joes, because Stalker was in the very first 1982 line when G.I. Joe launched. And there was 13 Joes in the original series. My brother Doug had 10 of them, and I had 3. I had Short Fuse, Snake Eyes, and Stalker. So yeah, I don't remember exactly what order I got them in, But yeah, he was definitely one of my earliest Joes.
I definitely see my dad looking at this though, not except a white guy.
Yeah.
Because that's the color of his uniform. He was a drill sergeant. That's the color of his uniform,
Yeah.
pretty much with the Canadian Army. So,
Okay.
like the combat boots and
Yep.
how they're nicely rolled and tucked into his combat boots, like the pants.
Yeah, like I like this figure. If there was one thing that they could have changed, I don't know why. It's not a bad head, but when I saw this head on the first figure, I thought he looked a little, I don't know, too angry or something. Stalker, I always pictured a little more, I don't know, stoic or something. And because the vintage figure, he didn't have any expression on his face, but none of them did. They were so simple in face sculpt. But when you look at the vintage packaging, he is kind of angry looking. So I guess, sure, why not? But I kind of would have liked maybe a softer face with this figure. But that's like a minor thing. But otherwise, yeah, colors wise, it looks great. Now, the one thing about this guy is by the time we got the last guy, they had already released their first few vintage figures or retro card figures. And I don't really want to have to buy every character twice. So if I know going forward that they're going to release every character on a retro card with a slightly more, better paint job that looks more like the vintage, then why am I even buying the boxed figures type of thing? Maybe I should just wait. So when that Stalker came out, like I said, a year or two ago, and it was pretty close to the standard look, like they hadn't changed him drastically. He was just darker greens. And the scarf, by the way, was removable, so he doesn't have to wear the scarf. I don't think I have mine displayed over there with the scarf. So I even thought at the time, I'm like, should I even buy that Stalker or should I wait because they're probably going to do a retro card? And sure enough, they do have the retro card. I like this one better. It's not drastically different, so it does kind of make my previous one seem a little redundant. And I really don't want all my G.I. Joes to become redundant because they keep re-releasing them. Like just recently in our last video, we talked about Doc.
Yep.
Doc is one of my favorite G.I. Joes. He was from 1983. This figure doesn't look exactly like the vintage figure because they added some extra pouches and stuff. His helmet is different because he's got a strap on his helmet. But it was good enough. But I'll be a little annoyed if they release a retro card Doc next year that looks more like the old figure. I'll be like, well, then why did I even really buy that Doc? So it does worry me a little bit, these retro carded figures that make the old versions redundant. Whereas a character like Duke, who the first release was quite different, so I'm fine with the retro card because the retro card appeases fans that like their toys to look like their old toys, but I don't feel like the other Duke was a waste of money because they look so different next to each other. The Stalkers don't look that different. Now, we'll go to a next retro card figure. So this is Cobra Commander. And this guy looks great. I'll let you go. What do you think?
Yeah, I am Cobra Commander is my guy. He's I know I always say Destro is my favorite, but this guy I think overthrows Destro. I love the sleekness of that helmet, the shine.
Yeah,
it's almost, it looks like chrome, but it's not chrome.
It's like back metal. Don't get your fingerprints all over his face.
Yeah,
there.
Sorry, he's gonna smudge.
You're gonna smudge them all up.
But this is a sick figure. I just love anything Cobra Commander. I actually just recently ordered a T-shirt of the retro carded Cobra Commander from
the artwork?
The 80s. Yeah.
I have a couple of those retro shirts. I have Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, but I bought them when I was still could fit into medium T-shirts. So if you ever see me wearing them on this channel, they'll be stretched pretty tight.
That's okay. We could set up an OnlyFans.
Yeah,
drive the channel. But he's cool. I love the two-tone, just the baby blue turtleneck, kind of thing with spikes on it. He's awesome. I love him.
He is cool.
I love him, and especially where I didn't get the Mickey Mouse Cobra
Yeah.
Commander, like that is nice. I don't feel as bad now.
Yeah. Like this guy is. So for one, he looks like the Cobra Commander from 1982/83 when we first saw Cobra Commander, and we have gotten 3 Cobra Commanders already in the classified line, but they were all repaints of one another, and it's a new look for him. He's much more like kind of regal. He's got more buckles and like double breasted, and he's got like a sword and everything. So they did that one in dark blue, then they did it in light blue, and then they did it in black with a cape. So I have all 3 of those Cobra Commanders, but this guy here is the first one to really kind of go back and look like he was how we remember him from the cartoon, from the vintage toy line. And yeah, if I only could keep one Cobra Commander in my collection, it would be this guy, and the other guys would.
It's just stellar. Like you can, I don't think you can beat that.
Yeah, and even when I was collecting like the 4-inch GI Joes, they had done a bunch of variations of this, but then they released a figure called Ultimate Cobra Commander, and they really just wanted it to be essentially this figure. It was the first time they'd chromed the helmet in a long time, but I found the proportions, like he seemed weirdly too tall, like he was taller than the other figures. He just looked a little out of proportion. Whereas this is great. I think he's the right scale, the right proportions. He's not too muscly. He's not too skinny. He's not too short. He's not too tall. I think everything about him looks great. I do like the color choices they've made here. I like that he's got his gun kind of fits in his backpack, just like in the vintage toy. Very, very cool. And I did buy the Cobra Hiss tank.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a crowd-funded thing that Hasbro did like a year ago. And one of the stretch goals or rewards for people who backed the Hiss tank was they got a retro Cobra Commander that was this exact same mold. And he came on a retro card, but there were some slight different paint variations. And a lot of people, I think, probably bought the Hiss tank just because they wanted that figure. Mm-hmm. And then there were other people that were kind of like, there's no way they're not going to re-release that Cobra Commander because everybody wants it. So,
which is what you told me.
Yeah, because I think you were thinking of getting the Hiss almost just for that reason, or you were going to buy it for a really high price from somebody else. And I said, just wait, they're going to re-release it. Now, sure enough, it is slightly different. So if you were an extreme completist, this one has a different color shirt. He has a different color belt. His logo is a little different. So it doesn't match exactly the one that came with the Hiss tank. But this is the, I would argue, better version. When you hold the two of them together, I like this one better. And the previous one didn't have a chrome mask. So this one definitely wins out on that alone.
Like you can legitimately see your reflection in the...
Yeah. As we're talking, it's funny because he's got a clear line through him.
Yeah.
So what I can see you
in
one side. And yeah, that's pretty crazy. But anyway, it's a cool figure. So yeah, very, very cool. So you'd think, since we have this definitive Cobra Commander, plus the 3 other Cobra Commanders, plus I have the other retro carded one that I never opened that came with this tank. So now I have 5 Cobra Commanders. You'd think we wouldn't need to buy any more Cobra Commanders.
They're not done with them.
And neither are we, because we have another Cobra Commander to talk about right now. This one was the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, supposedly. But then they made it available on Hasbro's website later. It was a bit of a panic trying to get them because Hasbro sold out before they even went. It went up for sale for just like the premium members, and then it sold out before it opened up availability to us standard members. And then we thought we might not get it, but then GameStop had some up for pre-order, and eventually we got it. And he came in a deluxe box, so he was a little bit more expensive. But he is cool. I've been wanting this figure since I was a kid. So this here is mutated Cobra Commander.
Once a man.
Yeah, the box actually calls him Once a Man Cobra Commander. Because if you have seen the original G.I. Joe animated movie from the 80s, that was where we first learned Cobra Commander's origin. And he was a scientist from a prehistoric society of like bug people. And he had blue skin, and anyway, he was mutated into this snake person, and as he devolves into this snake, he starts getting more and more insane, and he's muttering to himself, I was once a man, I was once a man. So that's why they call this Once a Man Cobra Commander. But like people have been making customs of this for years in the smaller, like the 4-inch scale and everything, and I've considered buying them. Those things were pretty expensive to buy the nice customs. but I held off, and now here I have an official release of mutated Cobra Commander. I think he's great.
Everything about this character was an experience. Like, even the box it came in, the holographic art on the box, like, it was amazing. I
have it here somewhere. Yeah,
I took my time opening this figure, and I'll let you.
I hope this comes across. Maybe have to do a split screen, but you see, it's lenticular. So there's 3 different images of Cobra Commander. There's him as with his helmet on, then there's him mutated, and then there's him as a full snake. It's definitely not really working right now, I don't think. But yeah, the sleeves comes off, and you can see. Anyway, it was a nice box, and it had like kind of a Velcro-y
tab.
Yeah, you open that up, and then you've got some artwork there. That scene is right from the movie where he was on trial and he was held inside of a clam. And yeah, really nice box, really nice presentation.
I just love that whole process of opening it up. I don't keep the boxes, but that is one box I might keep.
Yeah, it's in my to be determined pile over here. I've got a little stack of boxes. I think you can see. I think that's the box for the Stinger Jeep and stuff. There's nothing particularly special about that box. It's just like,
and it's funny. I hadn't seen the animated movie until you showed it to me. What, probably almost a year ago now.
Yeah.
I remember that scene from the box, and I think like just opening the figure and looking at that, it just drew me right back to the movie. And this is a solid character. Even standing him next to the Cobra Commander we just got, like the colors are a little different.
And he borrows, like he's got the exact same from the waist down. It's like the same figure.
Backpacks, same
backpack, same gun. He actually came with the exact same head, although was it mirrored on this one?
I don't think so.
So yeah, he came with a helmeted head, so you could put the standard Cobra Commander helmet on him, and he'd still have this exposed snake chest if you wanted to go.
And he had a shattered visor too.
He holds a visor that he can hold in his hand, and you can see some of the inner mechanics of the Cobra Commander's face shield, which is really cool. And the coolest thing about him, which even back when people were making customs of this figure, I don't think anybody ever went this far before. But in the movie, he starts off as the blue-skinned guy. He gets mutated by these spores into this snake guy, and then he slowly starts devolving more and more into a snake. And by the end of the movie, he's just like a straight-up snake slithering along the ground. But him and Roadblock have to team up. Mm-hmm. And Roadblock has been blinded, so Roadblock is trying to find his way through the Arctic because he escaped from Cobra La's headquarters. And Cobra Commander is like, we'll team up together, we'll form an alliance, and I'll be your eyes. So Cobra Commander has, at this point, his legs have devolved into just a snake tail, and he's wrapped around Roadblock, and he's telling him, like, go left, go right, or whatever, and he's directing him. So this figure came with a whole other Cobra Commander. This is Cobra Commander as the little snake guy. So he's really far gone at this point. He's got just the snake tail. He's still got these little arms that are slowly going away, and they're articulated too, so he can move his arms. Yeah. But I haven't even tried it, but I bet you can wrap this around Roadblock's waist.
Probably.
So Roadblock could carry him just like those scenes from the movie, which is really, really cool. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do one of these before. So to get not only mutated Cobra Commander, but fully mutated Cobra Commander, that was just like a really, really cool box set.
Again, yeah, the experience and everything. Like, you can see the little blue dots and stuff that he has on his face, or right there on the snake.
Yeah.
The articulation in the arms, just kind of. When I originally found out that they were going to have this dude, I thought it was just going to be a hunk of plastic and like little to no articulation. That's not a lot, but it's cool, and it's a Cobra, so
yep.
How fitting.
Yeah, he's going to look great up on my shelf, just perched in the front. Very, very cool.
That's probably my second favorite of the bunch we're reviewing today. Obviously, the first is...
So the Cobra Commander takes the number 1 and 2 spot for you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we still have a couple of cool figures to go. 5 more. Maybe we'll start with this pack. So there was a 2-pack that we ordered. These were only available from Hasbro's website. I forget what they call it, but it came with the Steel Brigade Commander and what they call the Twilight Guard, which is a black suited Crimson Guard. So both of these guys have they've been established in the vintage line before. The Steel Brigade was repainted in blue and green with a gold head as a mail away back in the day. I never had the gold head Steel Brigade, so I still don't have it to this day. But then in the 4-inch line, they did release a version of the gold-headed Steel Brigade, which I'll do a little side-by-side so you can see them. This is not a direct translation. The colors are a little bit darker. Mm-hmm. They tried to maybe go a little bit more realistic on this guy because the other colors before were a little loud. But yeah, to build out our Steel Brigade or Steel Corps army, I think this was just an obvious choice to go to the gold-headed version 2. I think it's pretty cool.
I like the blue on the gun.
Yeah, and his armor,
that pops.
I think his body design is pretty different from the other Steel Brigade.
Yeah, he seems more bulky. I guess it's
more armored.
The vest.
Yeah. I don't think I've actually done a side by side, but I will for the video. I'll get the other guy down.
Nice upsheath.
Yeah,
the knife.
You love those upsheaths.
I love the upsheath. Yeah, this guy's pretty sick.
Yeah, I like him. But I think of the pack, I think this guy is my preferred figure.
That half cape.
Yeah, the half cape is really cool, and that's something they've added. So Crimson Guards obviously are usually crimson, although they've done them in other colors because there's like a yellow one that's part of the Python Patrol. Mm-hmm. And in the, not really the vintage toy line, but the early 2000s toy line, they had something called the Shadow Guard, which was a multi-pack of all black Crimson Guards. So there is, there is precedent for this. But they've changed the name. It's not the Shadow Guard anymore. And I really don't think they did that for copyright reasons. Like in the vintage line, that guy was called Steel Brigade, but now they have to call him Steel Corps because they lost the copyright to the name Steel Brigade, and we all know that. I don't think they changed him from Shadow Guard to Twilight Guard for any reason other than they just wanted to kind of establish this as its own thing. They've given him this little half cape, which has got this really nice kind of red inside there. I love his accessories have purple. So he's got a little bit of purple like on his outfit in a couple of places. The hilt of his sword is purple. The guns all have purple on it. So the combination of the black, like the reddish orange and the purple, it's very striking. I think he looks very cool.
Yeah. The shine on that helmet, too, is unreal. Like, oof.
Yeah, really polished up.
Yeah, this is a pretty cool guy.
And they came with a lot of stuff, too. I've got a whole bag of accessories here of the things that we're talking about. You can see I've got guns, I've got bullet belts, I've got blast effects. There's Cobra Commander's head, and just to confirm, it is not.
It is not.
Yeah, it's not back metal. Yeah. So yeah, those guys came with a bunch of extra guns and extra knives and blast effects, a bunch of stuff. So it's a really good way to build up your armory too.
I ruin everything I touch.
Yeah, his little sheath. You can plug that into his belt, but if you don't want to have it there, you don't have to. I think he looks pretty cool holding his saber.
Sword.
Yeah.
Saber. Yeah. That is a really nice figure.
Yeah, very, very cool. And just a clever reuse of the existing Crimson Guard figure we already have. Very, very cool. All right. So these next 3 more, I think they're all pretty great. So maybe we'll start with the Night Force 2-pack. So if you ask almost anybody collecting the G.I. Joe Classified line what the worst figure released thus far, most people will probably tell you Lieutenant
Falcon. Yeah.
And it wasn't terrible per se, but he was the star of the animated G.I. Joe movie.
Yeah.
And he was a new character at the time. He was like Duke's little brother. He was kind of played as like this cocky, pretty boy. He was bringing girls in on dates to G.I. Joe headquarters, so he breached security and he got in trouble, but he was kind of young and brash and he didn't care. And we kind of follow his arc in the movie because G.I. Joe sent him off to Sergeant Slaughter to kind of whip him into shape. And so, yeah, he's kind of the hero of the movie. So a lot of people really like Lieutenant Falcon. And the figure they gave us, he looked old and ugly. I thought it looked like Tom Berenger.
He was an ugly motherfucker.
Yeah.
He reminded me of Well, actually, if Dolph Lundgren and Tony Danza had a baby, that's what his face looked like.
That sounds like the perfect human being right there.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it wasn't. Yeah.
No, it was super ugly.
But if this had just been a new character, like, sure, he would have been ugly. But I'm not, like, ugly people exist.
Yeah.
So I don't think every G.I. Joe needs to be a supermodel. I wouldn't have a problem with that head sculpt on another character. But Lieutenant Falcon in particular, it just seemed like a misstep. So everybody was saying, you need to give us a better Lieutenant Falcon. And they finally did. So there was a 2-pack, and we got Night Force Lieutenant Falcon.
Much more handsome.
The face sculpt is, it took 20 years off of him. It's he's handsome, he's young, and they've made other changes to the figure. Like, this isn't just the same figure in different colors with a new head. Like, there's a lot of changes here, different parts, and yeah, this is awesome. I kind of hope and expect that they will probably re-release this figure in the actual colors. So, like, when they get around to doing a retro card Falcon, it'll be this figure again in the proper green colors. So with the other Lieutenant Falcon we had was in his green colors, but he's so ugly nobody really wants him in the collection. So yeah, I bet we'll get this figure in green eventually. But until that happens, I'm glad we get the Night Force version.
I remember that's one of the first Joes that I actually got. Because he came out, 2 years ago now?
Yeah, probably the first in the classified line, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember getting him, and I was like,
yeah,
this guy is
ugly.
Super fucking ugly. Because I think he was the one I got from Walmart, and he showed up just before yours did. Okay. And I was like, this guy, I don't even know a lot about him, but.
Now, this is kind of interesting, and I'm looking over at my G.I. Joes right now. There's a handful of them that have bare arms. I don't think they put body hair on all of them. Mm. But he's definitely not the first. But they have given him hairy arms, which does seem like, I don't know, seems almost a little weird. It's like, if they're acknowledging, like, we screwed up the first time, we made him seem too old. We want to give you the young, pretty boy. Like, hey, even young, pretty boys have hair on their arms. But it just seems like a bit of an odd choice that they gave him the hair on his arms. I don't mind it, but at
least it's not real.
Yeah, it's not fuzzy. That's good. But yeah, I really like this look for Lieutenant Falcon. And if I'm being honest, like, I think even the vintage Night Force version is probably cooler looking than the standard green one. The version 1 green Lieutenant Falcon, like, sure, he looks like a realistic military guy, which was nice around the time he came out, because we were already starting to get a lot of really crazy colored and crazy characters. Lieutenant Falcon was a nice figure for those fans that like the military aspect. So he was a bit of a back to basics. But I would argue almost a little too much so. He was arguably a little boring. I think the Night Force colors make him a little more interesting. His beret still comes off, which is nice.
Yeah, it's a much welcomed redo, for sure.
And now I lost his beret. But yeah, very, very cool.
Yeah.
So as cool as it is to get that one, like I said, even if I didn't buy this 2-pack, I would be confident that we would get that figure in the green colors down the road anyway. But I had to buy this pack for the other figure in the collection. So this here is Quarrel. And I was really excited for this figure. And I'm very pleased with it. I don't know if you have thoughts on Quarrel.
I don't know too much about this figure. I think in our last video we were talking about how the female figures kind of suck because they're usually like super thin legs and they don't stand up because they're top heavy or whatever and fall down.
Not so much in G.I. Joe Classified. I find definitely in some of the Marvel Legends, some of them maybe the Star Wars Black Series, the girls are sometimes a little too spindly. Their arms are too thin. They try to put them all in high heels so they don't stand up very good. G.I. Joe Classified has been pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with most of the female figures. Like, we've got Jinx and Zorana and Helix. And, like, there have been a lot of really nice ones. But yeah, I think she continues the trend of being a really nice one.
Yeah.
So this character, if you're not familiar, and a lot of you may not be, because she was not in the vintage toy line. She is one of these characters that was released in other countries, and to a lot of us North American kids, we had no idea that they even existed. But a lot of other toy companies around the world, they would like license the G.I. Joe names, the G.I. Joe molds, and they put them out under their own brand. So in the UK, they had Action Force, which was their version of G.I. Joe, and they brought over a bunch of G.I. Joe characters, but sometimes they repainted them, sometimes they changed good guys to bad guys, sometimes they made them whole new characters. And in this case, they took Scarlet, and she normally wears, like kind of a tan and blue outfit, and she has red hair. In the UK, they released her in green and black, gave her blonde hair, and called her Quarrel. So she was a whole new character. And we got our first kind of official American version of Quarrel in the 4-inch line. I think she was part of the G.I. Joe Collectors Club, so not an easy
one. The mail away ones?
Yes, yeah. You had to join the figure subscription service, which was not cheap. So there's probably not a whole lot of collectors that have a 4-inch Quarrel in their collection. So to a lot of people, this might be their first opportunity. But I think this is the best one because for the first time, she has her own head sculpt. Mm-hmm. Like this body is a repaint of the retro card Scarlet. With some embellishments. I think like the chest piece I think is new and everything, but the head, they could have just repainted Scarlet with blonde hair and a lot of people probably would have been completely satisfied. But I really love that they gave her a unique head sculpt.
She looks like Ivan Drago's
like she's
person in Rocky.
Like, yeah, she's got very short blonde hair. Like, to be honest, it's probably more accurate to the vintage Scarlet figure. Because when you look at Scarlet in the old cartoons and the old comic books, she was always intended to have long, flowing red hair. But I just don't think they knew how to really do that in 1982. So she just had, like, red hair that just ended at her neck. Like, so she didn't have it. They could have gave her a ponytail or anything. Like, they figured it out by the time they released Baroness, like a year later. Mm-hmm. They made her hair a separate sculpted piece so it could kind of hang over her back to not hinder like her head movement too much. But I don't think they knew what they were doing quite with Scarlet. So Quarrel in the vintage Action Force line didn't have long hair either because she looked like Scarlet. In pretty much every version of Scarlet that's been released since 1982, they've corrected the short hair and given her proper long hair. I like that with this figure, they kept it short. It's accurate to the vintage Quarrel. And it differentiates her from Scarlet. Like, I don't look at this one and see Scarlet at all. She looks older. Mm-hmm. I would say she maybe even looks a little bitchy.
Yeah, I can see that.
She looks like she might be a bit of a Karen. But anyway, I love it. I'm happy to get a new character. And rather than just like a completely brand new character, I love characters that they pull from obscure parts of the lore and give us these nice figures. So yeah, this is a...
Well, now that you said that, though, she's going to complain about you making that comment to the manager.
Yeah, letter. Okay, so we have one figure left to review, but I forgot to mention with those other two we just talked about, I have their accessories set aside here as well in a separate little baggie. And sure, they have a bunch of guns and knives and all that stuff, but I think it's notable to say that they both came with these helmets that are similar to like the Steel Brigade kind of helmets. So yeah, you can have both of them wear these little helmets. They're actually alternate heads, so they don't fit over the existing heads. You have to actually pop the other heads off and put these ones on. But
kind of cool though, because you can build a little army.
Yeah, that's what I love. Like a lot of these characters that come with helmets that didn't before, like Clutch with the Jeep, or even Sabretooth that we talked about today with the helmet. Like those helmets kind of make them almost generic troop builders. So if you really wanted to buy this Night Force pack a couple of times, you could have a whole bunch of soldiers with those helmets, and it's pretty cool. All right, so this last guy, he is one of the weirdos. Like, there's a lot of weirdos in G.I. Joe, but this guy always really stood out as being particularly weird. Not just because of his weird outfit, but because of his weird background. His file card described him as like I don't know, accountant or tax consultant or something like that. And he also had a passion for birds. And for some reason, he gave up his accounting career and decided to become a terrorist bird guy. And so I have the vintage Raptor toy, which I'll put a picture in here. He was pretty goofy looking. He has this bird cowl over his head, and he's bare-chested. He had this soft goods feathery cape that, like, kind of like basically a cape, kind of like Superman, and he was pretty weird looking. Now they redid this character. Did I say his name's Raptor, by the way? So they redid Raptor in the 4-inch line, but at this point, all the figures were being made by the Collectors Club, who didn't have a whole lot of money to invest in new tooling. So they were trying to make these characters from existing parts. And so to make Raptor's cape, they took this jungle camouflage that came with another character called like Jungle Viper, and they reworked that into being his armor in kind of a weird way. But it was the first time Raptor went from having a feathery cape to kind of mechanical, like jagged wings. So this new version for the classified line, it seems to borrow more from that 4-inch line, which I don't think at the time was necessarily a stylistic choice so much as a necessity for the parts. But I think it really works well and makes him much more interesting than if you just had a cloth cape. So yeah, this is Raptor. He was a deluxe figure because his accessory is quite large. You can see he's got this backpack with the mechanical wings. They fold up quite nice, but they also expand pretty far too. Like if you spread these wings out, he's got like
probably like a foot wingspan.
Yeah, and they're so you can kind of move them up, move them down, fold them in different ways. Like it's a very cool kind of contraption that he's got here. It reminds me a lot of the Vulture figure from Marvel Legends, based on Spider-Man: Homecoming, when Vulture got these big mechanical folding wings. And I wouldn't have even been surprised if Hasbro just said, why don't we just reuse that rig, because we already have the sculpting. But they didn't. They just gave him his own unique thing. And yeah, I think, sure, he still looks like a goofball, but I think he's an awesome goofball.
He's an awesome goofball. And I mean, speak for yourself, Mike. This is probably, how I would dress if I was an accountant.
Yeah.
And decided to become a terrorist.
I would not want to see you in that outfit.
Yeah. I don't think you're the only one there. But yeah, he's definitely a weirdo, but a cool weirdo. I really like how the wings fold up. Like that's the big problem with characters like this and the wingspans, because there's usually not a way to display them properly without either falling over or knocking other figures over. This guy seems like it's so much easier.
Which, by the way, you have yours right over here, right? Because as is often the case, I buy a lot of Chad's G.I. Joes so we can save on shipping, and then I give them to him when I see him. So yeah, I just gave him his Raptor when he got here today. So yeah, he hasn't even handled this guy at all yet. So yeah, now you're seeing him, and he is pretty cool.
His name is Chip Talon.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chip Raptor Talon.
Interesting. I don't know if that's new or if that was on his vintage card. Most of the Cobra Troopers in the vintage line, they all had file cards, but their names were always classified.
Yeah.
There might have been the odd one, like the Dreadnoks. They had the real names and stuff on it, but yeah. So Raptor, maybe he did. But yeah, he's got a bunch of cool accessories. I don't know if you can see here. You can probably see it on the insert shot. But he's got these kind of like Wolverine-like claws. So you don't have to display those on there. Now, I will complain that I don't think they fit on there as well as they should. Like, they're very hard to get. I feel like they should be flushed like Wolverine's claws. Instead, they kind of are sculpted like almost inward, because that's the only way it really works. And I don't know if that's how they intended it to go. But whatever.
One thing that bothers me with this figure, though, is how loose the cowl is. Like, that would have been so easy to sculpt onto another head, just to...
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't bother me. Like, this is the first time Raptor has had a cowl that's removable. So we've never seen his hair before. And I think he looks pretty cool.
I'd probably display him without the cowl.
Yeah, like he's got long hair, but he's got it shaved all underneath. So it's like a mohawk, kind of all gelled back. It's a kind of a unique look. So yeah, we've never seen him without his helmet on. The cowl it is loose, but at the same time, it stays on well, like, because it kind of wraps under his chin almost. So it's got a bit of like a grip. So it doesn't rattle around on him.
Yeah, it's not like I'm going to be playing with him. So
Yeah. And then the other thing, which I don't have here, is of course he has a Falcon,
which is called General Ledger.
Yeah, nice. I don't think I noticed that before. But this guy didn't have a name in the vintage toy line, but yeah, now they've called him General Ledger. That's funny. So yeah, he can just be perched on Raptor's wrist. There's a little hole there for him to do that. I kind of wish there was a hole on his backpack. It'd be nice to kind of have display options so you could move the what is he, a hawk around, I guess.
We say that every time and they never do it. Like, come on.
Yeah. Because you could with Spirit. With the first version of Spirit, who came with his Eagle Freedom, Freedom could either sit on his wrist or on his backpack. Shoulder. But then on the second version of Spirit, they gave him a different backpack, and he lost that perch. And with Raptor, the only option is to put him on the wrist. And the way his arm is sculpted, it doesn't... I can't get it to sit quite right, so the bird is sitting naturally. It's almost like his arm's tilted, so the bird ends up being kind of like sideways, which looks a little weird. And just another complaint about the bird is that he's got the little cap over his eyes, and his wings are like there's no articulation on him. He's a stationary, perched bird. I think the bird in the vintage line, which I don't have because I got the figure secondhand with none of his accessories, but my brother had him when we were kids. I think the vintage one was sculpted like flapping its wings like this, so you could take him off his wrist and pretend he was flying around. Also, he had, I think, a removable cap on the bird's head. The 4-inch one, Raptor, definitely had that. He had a bird, and you could lift this little cowl off of his eyes. So if they could do that for the 4-inch line, you'd think they could do it for the 6-inch line. So this bird becomes really just an accessory to sit on his wrist. It doesn't really feel like a character in its own right because it can't even see with this hood on. His wings don't flap. So yeah, he's a bit of a disappointment. And if I had one other complaint, kind of a clear flight stand would have been nice.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the DC Superman figures come with this little clear plastic arm that you can put around Superman's waist so you can pose your Superman like this, and he's just hovering above your shelf. It doesn't have to be anything too fancy. But yeah, I think with Raptor...
It's a flying character. It's meant...
Yeah, he's got this whole big rig on him with wings. It would be nice if you could put him on your shelf and, he hovered above the other guys by just like an inch or something, but, Anyway, pretty cool.
Yeah, super cool.
So a good haul all around. We'll be back soon with another one because, like I said, we've got a guy arriving on Tuesday and probably a lot more soon afterwards. Why don't you sign us off, Chad?
All right, so thank you for watching. If you enjoyed our little powwow here today, some of the figures, what were your favorite figures from the lot we had? Leave us some comments. Make sure to like, subscribe. We enjoy the comments. Until next time.
Yeah. Here's a comment idea. Is he allowed to say powwow? Is that still okay? Or is that...
If you enjoyed our conversation and the toys we talked about today, make sure to like, subscribe, leave us some comments. And then until next time, keep collecting.
Ciao.
Chad is not a racist.